Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montevilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Pfaff Ambition 620. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do sequencing. Now, sequencing is where you have a line of stitches that are different stitches, like letters and combinations of stitches. But you can also do just regular, beautiful, complete lines of stitching like this. But if you wanted to do, say, one of those and maybe one of these or one of these, I'll show you how to do that. So to start with, let me show you. Okay, here I did Pfaff and two, like a heart on each end. I'll show you how to do that. So down here we have these little tabs. Right here, this is the sew out tab. And to move that over, we go over to here. Now I've already got this on here. I'm going to just go ahead and erase what I have on here. I can erase it one at a time, or I can just press and hold like that. Delete all stitches, yes. So now I have a clean stitch field. If I had not already sewn something, or if I just turned on the machine, this stitch field would be blank. Okay, so let's stitch out what I just had right here. So we're going to start over here at 119, that little heart right there. 119. There it is. It appeared right there. Now we're going to tab over to lettering right here. Now in this area, you have options for uppercase, lowercase, and you can move that over here, like as you go. Whoops, this way. Sorry, go back. I'm sorry. Go back. I was in the wrong thing. What I should have done is move the cursor up. I'm going to go up like that. There. Now we can get into lettering. But anyway, you have for uppercase, lowercase, European letters and numbers. And then you have Cyrillic letters down here that you can tab over to. Okay, so let's spell out Pfaff right there. And then we're going to go over to here, lowercase letters. And there's the F. Go back over to here to A. And then you can also press and hold to get there a little bit quicker, like that and that. Then I'm going to go tab back, but I need to move the cursor down so it's in this tab area. You see those two little arrows there. It's important to do that before you change tabs. Now you use the back arrow to go back to this here. Then we're going to put that one back in there. And I remember which one it was this 119. That's what it looks like that in the picture. Now we've got that in there. It's ready to go. So to stitch it out, it's going to tell us, I'm going to need to move the tab over to the stitch out area right there. And then I go to information. It tells us what foot to use and to use stabilizer. It recommends using stabilizer if you have a thinner fabric. And then it shows you the thread tension that's already preset for this particular stitch out that we're going to do. And the stitch width is a maximum of 7 millimeters. So it's going to be from the bottom to the top of that whole thing. The stitch out is 7 millimeters. And then the stitch length is approximately 49 or 46 millimeters. It depends. It's different on different fabrics. It might stitch out a little bit differently. But that's approximately the length of what's going to stitch out. Now, why do we want to use stabilizer? If you're using a thinner fabric, as you can see here, I did a zigzag with no stabilizer. See how it kind of scrunched up that fabric? I used a stabilizer on this part here, and see how nice and flat that is. Now this happens to be a tearaway stabilizer, so when I'm all done I can tear it away. There may remain a little bit of stabilizer in the back, but that's fine. For the most part, the stabilizer will be gone and the stitch will remain. You can also use wash away stabilizer. Now you can get stabilizer like this here at Montevilla. I believe we have, you can get like 15-yard rolls, but you can also, of this particular tearaway stabilizer, our manager has cut up like 1-yard rolls that you can get for a couple bucks and make quite a lot of stitching with a 12-inch by 1-yard piece. Okay, but I'm going to use my denim because we don't need to have any stabilizer with that. Actually, I think I will get a piece of stabilizer. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, and I'm going to use this yellow here. We'll use that. Okay, so it says what foot to use. That's a 2A foot. Now, the 2A foot, let me show you the difference between that and your all-purpose 0A foot. The 2A foot, as you can see, doesn't have a place for your IDT, so if it's engaged, pull it down and back to disengage it. The reason why you don't want to have your IDT or your walking foot engaged in that is because it does give a little bit of abrasion at the top, and if you're using like a rayon, shiny rayon thread, you don't want to have any abrasion on that, so it's out of the way. And then it also has this indentation at the back, and that is important for things that are thick, where you need to have your stitching flowing through there and not have anything on the foot hanging it up. So that's why we want to have the 2A foot on here. Okay. Lower that down, put that on there like this. And then I want to show you how, I'm going to go back to the this tab here. I can tab through here like this, okay? Place to place. When I go back to the stitch out menu, you look over here, you can see the beginning of another heart. If I just let it sew, it would do heart, pfaff, heart, heart, pfaff, heart. Well, we want to have just one of those, so I'm going to show you how to do just one of those repeats. So let's get started sewing. Okay, I'm going to speed it up a little bit more. There we go. And then I push this button here after it started sewing. That will tell the machine to stop at the end of that first repeat, the heart, pfaff, heart, and cut the threads at that point. So up here it shows us where we are. We're at that last heart, and you can see there it's stopping all by itself. And I just used the start-stop button. That's all I did. Start-stop button and the scissor button right there. So it stitched it out really beautifully. I can cut off these little threads, and there we go. So if we wanted to save that into the machine, you can save one sequence in your machine. We would go into here. We'd go like this. Now I've already got something in the machine, so I'm going to overwrite that. I'm going to say yes. Now if I didn't want to overwrite that, I would push no and then OK, and then we'd just go back to that. But I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, and yes, I want to overwrite that. File successfully saved. OK means go ahead and push your OK button to get out of that screen. That means now if I turned off my machine and I turned it back on, right now it's going to get back into regular straight stitch sewing, but if I wanted to bring that out that I just memorized in the machine, push that button, there it is. It's already stitched out. So that's how you can save stitch sequences. Now, there are other interesting things that you can do. I'm going to go to here. With these turnover keys, it's a really neat thing that you can do. So let's say I wanted to do these flowers here, and I wanted to have one flower going one way and one flower going the other way. I just push the turnover key, and you can see right there. When I went to stitch that out, let's go over here, have a whole line of these. One going one way, one going the other way. And if I wanted those closer together, I can do stitch length like that, make them a little bit closer. If I wanted them maybe a little bit shorter, I can do that. But when you do this, make sure you are in the stitch out tab, not the sequencing tab, because if you're in the stitch out tab, you're only going to say change that one particular one, which you can do. You can have a large flower and a small flower, large flower and small flower. In fact, I will show you how that works. I'm going to do this, make that shorter, narrower. That beep beep means it's gotten to the limit of how much it can adjust it. Okay, so let's go over to the stitch out and see you've got large, small, which is a nice little variation that you can do. Also, you can save this sequence in your machine. Just keep in mind you've only got one memory spot, so it would overwrite that other one. Also, with the memory, if you're not going to be doing a lot of sequences that you need to remember, you can actually use this as a favorite stitch sort of thing. Like for instance, if you routinely had your zigzag number 4 and you decided you wanted a little bigger, a little bit longer, And every time you push forward, you got to remember, now how did I do that? Don't have to do that. Just make your adjustments and then save it in memory. And then you just go to memory and it would come up with your zigzag stitch all adjusted for you, just right. Okay, so another thing about sequencing is, I don't know if you noticed this, but up here you have some of your stitches that have like a baseline, like that heart. Okay, that has a baseline. Whereas the stitch up here, let's say this 1, 2, 3 stitch, no, it's a pair, that's actually what it is, but it would join right in the middle here. When you're combining lettering stitches with decorative stitches, make sure you use the ones that have a baseline, because that's where your letters are adjusted, their baseline. And that way you don't have this big long jump stitch that jumps from the end of a letter up to the middle of your motif. Just a little design thing like that. Okay, you can also add spaces between, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Let's say I wanted to do a little flower. Okay, so 70, let's get into sequencing again. I'm going to erase all that. 79, and then I want to do some leaves under that flower, so 96. Okay, now if I go over to the stitch out, it almost looks like those leaves are growing out of the top of the flower. I'd really like to have a little more space between those two, so I'm going to show you how to do that. You go over to stitch number 1. That adds 1 stitch, and it gives you a little more space between those stitches. Also, you can add, if you have letters that, okay, let's erase that. Delete all stitches, yes. So let's say I wanted to spell out Pfaff 620, but I wanted a space between those two. I'm going to show you how to do that, because remember, we want that on the baseline, not up in the middle. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's go over to here, and this time I'm just going to do uppercase for the whole thing. Okay, now I want to do a space in there, which is just like a stitch, maybe a couple stitches. So I'd go back over. Actually, I'm going to put this right here. Okay, well, here's the space. Actually, it's actually right in here. There's the space right there. So you have spaces for lettering, but for your motifs, you can use the stitch here. Let's just erase that so I can show you what I'm talking about. Yes, we want to erase all of that. And we're going to do, I'm going to go down to here. So I showed you how to do spacing with lettering. I'm going to show you how to do spacing with decorative motifs. Okay, so I want to do a single space, but look where it puts it, right up there. I'm going to move that down this way with this button. This is your stitch width or needle position button, so I'm going to move that down. I'm going to keep holding that until it gets right to the base. Now, the stitch out, see how it spreads out those little trees? That's a really useful thing if you have, say you're doing a hem on, say, cotton type fabric, and you don't want your stitches really close together. You want your motif spread out a little bit more. You can use that single number 1 straight stitch and add 1 or 2 of those to spread out those motifs a little bit more. So there's a lot you can do. There's probably even more than what I've shown you here. I invite you to try it out, experiment, make sure you're using a good stabilizer. You don't necessarily need stabilizer on something heavy like denim, but on your thinner fabric, you want to have some sort of stabilizer. You'll be much happier with the result. Make sure that you use the correct foot when you are doing your stitching, and have fun with this machine. We've got a lot of other videos here, so you can watch those too and find out more about this machine. If this was a helpful video to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, you can leave those in the area below. Thanks for watching. Bye.